one of the best parts of my job is being able to interview people that inspire me and motivate me. And today I am so lucky to be interviewing Mr. Don Hobbs, who I love listening to just about every morning on Clubhouse. Welcome, Don.
Thanks, Michelle. Nice to meet you in this way instead of on the app. This is exciting.
You know what? I haven't told you this, but we actually have a mutual friend.
Who's
Um,
that?
I'm really good friends. Well, not as good of friends, but Rory Vaden.
Oh yeah, Rory's a great guy. Love him. Yeah, it's
He
fantastic.
Yeah, he is actually the reason why I am a coach, believe it or not.
Oh, that's so fun. I'm taking a screenshot of our YouTube, or not our YouTube, our Zoom that we're using this audio from, and I'm gonna send that over to him. So we'll
Oh,
say hi.
good.
That's
He
awesome.
Yeah, he is the reason when I started the New Mid podcast, I went to Brand Builders and he pulled me aside and he's like, "Michelle, you need to be a coach." And he's like, he goes, "Look back on your life in 10 years. How would you feel helping midlife women?" And I started crying. And he's like, so I owe that
Awesome.
to him.
That's so cool. He's dynamic. He's great. He's fun. He's brilliant. So I'm glad we have him as a friend, and we'll certainly make use of that. I'll use the picture and lure him into a conversation later today.
Well, it's interesting because you talk about surrounding yourself with great people.
Yeah.
And you started, I love your story, but your story is a who's who. You had Mark Hughes, you said that you were with, you had Tony Robbins, yourself. I mean, this is an incredible story. Do you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a young teen, 19 and 18, and headed to a program with Jim Rohn, and fell in love with the guy. If you don't know who he is, look him up. He's very findable, and he was such a mentor to me, and instantly I knew it. I mean, I recognized it was date night. I remember not wanting to go, and then within 15 minutes going, "Oh my God, thank God I came," And I walked up to him and said, "I wanted, much like what Rory said to you, only I said it to Jim. I want to be like you. I want to do this. I want to do what you're doing." And 1,000 people in the South Coast, West and South Coast Plaza Hotel in Costa Mesa, California. And I wanted to do that. And I could see it. I didn't know. I mean, this was not my world, Michelle. You have to understand, it was not my world. But I got into it. And then once I joined Jim, which was a little bit of a story, Tony Robbins came along 3 months later. He joined our company. Mark Hughes never joined our company, but he was around. But Larry Thompson, who was very big in that same world, he was a longtime friend. And Mark Victor Hansen was in our world. I mean, there were so many people that were in that early stage. And of course, Mark Victor Hansen of Chicken Soup for the Soul and Chicken Soup for Everything, Chicken Soup for the Soul for everybody.
I love that
Thing.
chicken soup.
Yeah, so we were just, it was kind of right place, right time, and I was in the right mindset for it. I was looking for answers, and I didn't have a father figure, and Jim kind of became that for me. It was it was late. It was early business, late childhood, if you will, that early adulthood, and for me, it was just a very impressionable time, and I got to hang with him. And of course, Jim was the one who had been quoted as saying, we become the 5 people that we hang around the most. And I was very fortunate because that little core of people, we had like 250 salespeople, and there were so many dynamic stories that came out of that, companies that were built, things that were done. All of that happened as a result of that first start. And then, it's been that kind of a story for my whole life. I started a training company that became the biggest in the real estate space, teaching personal branding and marketing, a little like our friend Rory. Early day stuff back in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, when personal branding wasn't a subject, when it wasn't a topic. And we built that to huge numbers, and we were putting about 50,000 people a year through our programs. And so that was exciting. And then I had a chance to work with a guy by the name of Gary Keller, who was the founder of a company I think you used to work around, Keller Williams Real
Keller
Estate.
Williams, right?
Yeah, Gary and I had been friends for years. I was his first speaker for his first convention ever, when they only had 350 people in their whole Mammoth company, and now Mammoth company. I always joke that, something I said must have been awesome because it blew the company right up. But of course, that has nothing to do with the truth. It was just more a fun fantasy. But, Gary wrote a book in 2014 called The One Thing. And I got a chance to build a whole company around that with him. And it's just been kind of a fantasy world of being in this personal development, human growth and potential movement. And I found my way. I loved it. And it just became my identity. It just became what I could so see that that's what I wanted. I love when people's lights go on and they get it. And so for me, that was what it was all about.
Well, it's amazing how you can have your destiny decided by a simple,
A moment.
yeah, by a single moment, and you call
Yeah.
it the sliding door.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny. Thank you for bringing that up. I always refer to that movie because I remember when I watched the movie thinking how true to life that is. If you've never seen it, it's Gwyneth Paltrow, makes it through the doors of the tube in London and gets to work, and then they do the same scene and she doesn't make it through the tube and goes home, and they track both lives, do the movie with both stories being told simultaneously because she made it through, she didn't make it through, went to work, didn't go to work, and the two lives that track. And you think about how many of those sliding glass moments we've had, Michelle, when we're making a choice. It's do I go the left path or the right path? And you know what I'm saying? It's just, there's so many moments in time and you go, that was a decision point for
Right.
my whole life that came out of that moment. And
Well,
it's powerful.
it's so interesting because didn't you have the opportunity to go to some well-named universities and you passed on that?
I did. I'd kind of decided because I really got into business right before I met Roan, and I started loving that. And but I passed up Stanford and UC Irvine with scholarships. And it was really, for me, it was just like school just didn't have the allure. And I knew that this personal development thing was all about my self-education anyway. So it was going to be, instead of their learning path, it was going to be mine. And I just devoured books. I took a speed reading course, and Tony Robbins and I used to just practice turning pages because that was the limitation to how fast we could read books, and just poured through them because we were young and I wanted to get the years of experience from other people's experience instead of having to go through everything myself. It was easier to read from Marriott or the big names of the time, and read their stories and go, wow, I could do that. It was inspirational, it was directional, it was focused, and it was the education I wanted instead of the education I was going to get from an institution. So it's not wrong for somebody to go. It's just my path was different.
Well, you're kind of an old soul because when at 16 you were working in a shop and they made you the pro, which is, you think, oh my gosh, how in the world would they have a 16-year-old do this? So you definitely are an old soul, and at 18 making those
Thanks.
choices. But
It's funny, you know all this stuff. You did your research. That's cool.
I
Nobody knows that.
I love talking about making choices, and we're in the new year. So we have a
Yes.
whole new year in front of us, 2022.
How
And I know,
exciting.
and everyone says, enter this year cautiously, not too loud, but because of what happened with 2020. That being said, innovating yourself, we've all had to do that. And we have this wonderful opportunity, this wonderful new year in front of us. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I'll say two things really. One, it's interesting how we use the calendar as an excuse. So it's the first of the year. It could be Thursday and we go, hey, today's the day that turns my life around. But the end of the year represents, closing out one chapter, the beginning of a new year. It's convenient, right? It's just kind of an accepted approach. And, we laugh and talk about the people that are making New Year's resolutions. Obviously, most of them never last. So it's a time of real change potential. And, I think it all starts here, unfortunately, and I don't mean it starts with me, it all starts with you, the individual. And we've got to make those choices and decisions about what we're going to do differently, how we see our life. And I think it's really about deciding, what do you really want? Not what are you limited to based on your past thinking, how it's always been, your family heritage, your story from the past. I mean, I grew up in a household that wasn't, it was kind of broken. My father was a rageaholic. I mean, there were a lot of things that I could say were my limitations, and yet I've chosen not to make those the limitations. And I found a group that, kind of fostered me and nurtured me and brought me up, raised me up. We need to find those groups. I mean, like you, this is part of that vision for how you elevate people. I think each person's going to have to really dig in right now, because it's obvious, through the pandemic, a lot of things became clearer, and that is that we are more in charge of our decisions. Now, there are those who've given up that power and said, no, you don't understand, there's this thing going on. But I've also seen people rising up and becoming the very best of them, doing things they didn't think they'd ever do, that would have never stepped out of the comfort zone, except somebody pushed them out of it. And so for that reason, now's an excellent time. And we've got to start with the inner, what are we doing to educate ourselves? What podcasts are we listening to? What are we doing to, raise ourselves up, elevate our thinking? It's hard to think bigger than we think,
right?
Until somebody feeds into us, until we get other input, till we read something, go, oh, I didn't even know that was possible. Where are you going on vacation? France? I mean, it's like, it's like, things are different when we start to get around people that think bigger. And I think for anybody right now, there's a matter of that. And of course, there's some action steps they want to take. There's some things that probably would be serving their future to get into, looking at their time, looking at how they're doing things, decisions they're making, new relationships. I don't mean like leaving husbands, wives. I don't mean that. I mean just new relationships. Many times the who is one of the biggest things that changes life.
Right. Well, it's interesting because a lot of times people will be held back by fear.
Yeah, for sure. Well, fear is unfortunately, it's in all of us. I mean, don't get, if you're sitting there thinking, yeah, I'm scared to death, I don't know what to do. You're not alone. It's scary. And yet fear is just the story we're telling ourselves about how we think it's going to be if we, and how it's easier to cling to what we know. It's far more comfortable. But, for me, where my mind went with that a lot of years ago, Michelle, was starting to understand that the comfort of where I am, considering this is not what I want for my life. I want more than this. I want more than this. I want more than this. There was always more. I can't get there from here. And so I have to let go of that. And, we did a session in Clubhouse last week about leaning into your fear. Like that's where you drive in, right? You go there. I'm afraid to speak. Well, get up and do some speaking, like force yourself, go take Toastmasters and learn how to do that, right? Or offer to do some speaking engagements for your friends and then figure out how to speak, like go watch 10 YouTubes and figure out how to outline things. And, I'm saying it's like, we have to push ourselves through that point. And if you're at a place where your life is, you're ready for change, you don't know how, it's going to be in the comfort zone. It's going to be there. You're definitely going to feel uncomfortable. And the biggest thing I can tell you is you got to get comfortable getting uncomfortable, because that's where the juice is. That's where the fun, the excitement, the possibilities, that's where all the new is on that side.
You talk about going from the knowing to the doing, taking action. And a lot of us are listening. I know I have some community, my listeners out there,
Sure,
that just can't quite get off the couch.
Hi guys.
We're midlife women. We put everyone else in front of ourselves usually. And I'm even guilty of that as well. So what do you say to someone how to get started?
Well, there's a number of things. The first is, I think it's getting the inspiration, because a lot of times it's hard to see a new path until we're inspired that there are other paths. This is the one we know. This is what we set. This is the path we set upon. And I won't say settled for, but it could be. It could be that we settled for this. It could be that we intended something and then life became a settling. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, right, it's hard to see it, because I don't know if you've ever heard the way to cook a frog, but if you heat up water to boiling and you drop a frog in it, it'll pop right out, right? And it may be a little burned, but it's going to be out. But if you just put it in nice lukewarm water and just turn the heat up a little bit. It will just sit there until it cooks. And I'm not suggesting we will cook frogs, but I'm suggesting that, if you understand that you can just start making changes and start making changes, we don't see ourselves settling in slowly but surely. We don't see ourselves getting stuck slowly but surely. We just describe it as life. This is just
Right.
life. This is my life.
It's kind of what we know, and it's what we
It is.
tolerate.
It is. It's the known versus the unknown, and the unknown is scary, and the known is safe. And yet, again, back to the thought: is it really safe to think about this is my life for the rest of my life?
Right. We're in midlife.
That
So we have
that
less sand in our hourglass. So
a
what
lot of
are we
sand.
doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the
And by the
things,
way, I'll make one point about your
yeah,
midlife too, because we were talking the other day, and the guy said he was thinking of. He actually wrote me a note and said, "I don't think I'm going to be doing too much more in the real estate space. I'm kind of getting ready for retirement." And this guy, I won't mention his name, almost did, is probably 64 years old. And I'm thinking, wow, it's such an old guard thought about retirement. Our parents, my parents, I mean, some of these people's great grandparents, right? They got jobs and they lived in that job for 30 years and they got their watch, their retirement pension, and that was the end of it. And by the way, stats on that were pretty bad, because the stats on that was 3 years from retirement, you're dead.
right.
Well,
Yeah,
we're
absolutely.
going to live much longer. We're going to live much longer. So number one, do we have the income to last us for all those years? Do we have the wherewithal to last all those years? But I look at people today that are 60 and we laugh and go, 60 is the new 40. It's, it's really a different time when we're in that place where we can start things at 40, 45, 50, 60 years old and start those
Yes.
projects, start that life, start that behavior, start that focus. And so anyway, you were going to ask a question. I interrupted
No,
the
it's
thought.
okay, because I love this topic, because I know someone who's 64 who's going back to school to learn something completely different. How fantastic is that? I had a client who's 53. I have a client who's 53, and she told me, I'm going to retire at 55. And I looked at her and I said, no, you're not. And she said, what? I said, no, you are not retiring at 55. There is way more for you to do. And can I tell you, she is on fire right now. And she
Yeah, it's great.
jokingly, our last call was like, you're right, I am not retiring. And there's no such thing as needing to slow down to
Mm-mm.
stop. We need to keep growing and going to school. But there is the issue of time and time
Yes,
management.
yes,
And I have
yes.
heard you speak about vacation time.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that. I think that for most people, especially if they start their own business, like you're an entrepreneur, you've started this awesome thing, you're great at what you're doing. And it's easy to get locked up in that 24 hours a day because there's no off. And especially if we're working out of home. I mean, the last year, 2 years has proven that, right? We're working out of our homes. How do you delineate? And how do you separate this from that? And it's all merged, and the kids are at home and we're working, and it's like it's gotten really interesting, right? So I think a lot of it is, and I talked about the vacation miracle many years ago. I had a coach who, I'll shorten the story to say, in 3 sessions over 3 months, had me look at how much time I really wanted off for my life. And he said, plan your life first, not business, because we always get business plans. This time of year, we just finished a lot of business planning clinics and business planning programs, and that's easy. But plan the life first. I mean, I'm doing all of that right now as we speak. I've got my calendar out, and we're doing the initial planning of blocks of time, just like I'm talking about, and go through and figure out, like, what time do you want off? You want a 3-day weekend? You want a 4-day weekend? You want 2 weeks off to be able to go someplace far? You want whatever you want. What do you want for your life? How much time do you want to be home at 5 o'clock? You want to be home at 4 o'clock? You want home, whatever you dictate. I don't care what the business is. It's not the time you put in, it's what you put in the time. So what I want people to do is get their life organized. What do you want your life to look like? And then let's build everything around that. Let's put business and things that are more restrictive in between those things. That is called life, our life, the life we've designed, life by design. So I think that's one piece. The second month I got back with him, and after I'd already come up with this exact thing, this calendar, and he said, okay, so where do you want to go? What are you going to do? What are the places? And I said, okay, I've got some ideas in South America and Europe and, this and that, whatever. And then I got with him a third month and he said, okay, buy the tickets, like commit. That's your
Oh
life.
gosh. Yeah, that is like,
That scared the crap out of me.
yeah, right. I mean, that's putting, money where your mouth is kind of.
Yeah, it's putting things in action. And I remember rebelling, going, it doesn't even feel real that I designed this. Now it doesn't feel real that I'm going to be able to go. How will I afford this much time off? How will I afford that? And it's interesting because he said, did you ever notice that when you're leaving for vacation, that you're super hyper focused, like you're on point? Hey, listen, Michelle, I'm leaving Friday. I know you wanted to do this podcast, but I can't do it because I got this thing, right? So I'm pushing off things and going, no, this is what's happening on Friday. I'm leaving. And we get laser focused on the things that really matter the most. That, as I like to say, move the ball forward down the field faster and more directly. And when we do that, when we get really laser focused, we get it done. Well, he said, I want you to be on vacation mode all the time, this vacation mindset where you're always just leaving, where I always got to be done by Thursday because I'm leaving on Friday morning. Or, he said, I want you to be in that mode. And it didn't make sense. I kind of got the concept, but it didn't make sense to me until that next year. My company tripled in volume. We hit $25 million that year in sales. And we did, my partner and I both doubled our personal incomes. We were making multiple seven figures. And all of that changed with one decision, which was design life first, design business around it. And
That's,
so
well,
it's pretty powerful.
what's interesting is you get crystal clear on your priorities.
You do. You have nothing but focus because you decide, of the hours that I've given to work, what things are the most important things. Everything else has to sit on the sidelines. It's on a list. Maybe it's somebody else. The question I always ask is who, not you. Who else could do that? Right? Who else could do that?
Yes.
Because you can, in today's world, you can gig economy your way into so much freedom, right? You can have groceries delivered. You can have people cooking for you. You can have, anything is possible. Yes, some of it takes money. Some of it is just creativity.
Yes, that is true. You you have the Success magazine,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is how we both know Rory.
Yes, exactly.
How do you define success? You're talking about these multiple figures and dollar amounts.
Right.
How do you define success?
Um, I've changed my thoughts on that a lot through the years, Michelle, but I'm going to tell you my current definition is doing what you want, when you want, as often as you want, with whoever you want. That it's freedom. It's just the freedom to be able to do whatever, to make those choices. But I know this success is different for each and every person. For some, it's defined through family. For some, it's defined through business. For some, it's defined through a sport or through a hobby. Success is really, the cleanest way I ever saw it was success is getting what you want. Okay, that makes sense, right? Success is getting what you want. It's not what I want. It's not what I want for you. It's what you want for you. And the only thing I always say is, as long as it's what you really want, not what you've settled for or what somebody else has harnessed you into or forced you into or made you play small into, right? As long as it's what you want, it's success, and that can be defined through anything. But I think for me, it's really about freedom and having the most possibilities for my life, that there's no limits. And the only limits, of course, for any of us truly are right here. That's the reality. What it looks like is my husband, my wife, my kids, my upbringing, my story. But what it really is here, right? So when we get to that, we start changing this, things start to change.
Right. We talked earlier about the people you surround yourself, and you have had some amazing people in your life, and you are amazing. That's why I'm so excited to be interviewing you.
Thank you. Thank you. I've been fortunate.
Of all the people that you've met, of all the people that you're interacting with in the past and current, what would you say have been maybe the top three golden nuggets that have helped shape you to be the success that you are today? I know that might be a bit of a loaded question, but we have mentors, we have people that encourage and inspire us. It could be a fifth grade teacher, you know, someone
Sure.
who, i- someone who really, has made help etch, who you are today and how now have inspired so many people and continue to inspire so many people.
Yeah.
So
Thanks,
what would
Michelle.
you say has been, given to you? What would you say?
My grandfather taught me humility and the beginnings of people skills, really treating people well. He was a fourth grade educated man who came to this country pretty young. And, it was English was a second language to him. And so he didn't have some of the school smarts, but he had street smarts and he had heart smarts. He was really very in tune with what, was in his heart. Jim Rohn was a huge giver for me. And, for things to change for you, you've got to change. You can have anything you want. As long as you change your thoughts around it, you can have more than you've got because you can become more than you are. I've changed that to be, you can have more than you've got when you remember who you are. And by the way, that's a great message for this group that's listening today, that you can have more than you've got when you remember how freaking great you are and how unlimited you are. When you remember that, you may have forgotten. Life may have created that. Your situation may have created that. Some decisions you may have created that, but it's not true. You're bigger than you know. That was one. Tony Robbins still inspires. We just had him speak for one of our events in August. I've attended Date with Destiny. They just finished that on virtual form in December of 21. I think he's such a big thinker. And I hung out with him at his island retreat in Fiji, and you just have to think bigger. I've jumped out of perfectly good planes and off bridges, and I've done crazy things with him. And there's always a push. There's always an edge. There's always we got to do more. We got to do more. And no matter where I get, I'm like, oh, there's a whole other layer when I hang around with him. So he's been an inspiration for me as well. And I got to tell you, I live with a person who pushes me. She's dynamic and knows no limits and just like pushes constantly for more learning, more knowledge, more direction, more focus, more, bigger, just bigger. So I'm fortunate, and I get to hang with all those people, and still most of them, except for my grandfather, of course, who left quite a while back, and Jim Rohn. But I get around to get some pretty cool people. And I think that's one of the biggest traits of success and of free people that are free in mind, is the people they hang around, the influence in their lives.
This has been amazing, Don. It's so great to talk to you. So great to have you on this podcast.
Thanks,
And
Michelle.
I completely agree with you. I have an ebook called Find You Again, because I think a
Love
lot
that.
of women in midlife, so much has happened in our life that we need to peel these layers apart to get to the amazing people that we are inside. And now that we are at the beginning of 2022, I would love if you could leave us with a couple thoughts on hope for this year, hope for humanity, hope for the women and maybe some men. I know there are some men out there listening. Hope for
That's
us.
okay. We'll talk to them too. Yeah, two things. One, I want to say quickly that if there's anybody that's listening to you because they're in that place of change, ready for that step up, ready for that step out first, usually it's a step out and then a step up. I would say, I've helped a lot of people in the real estate space. It's a business that has huge potential. And if anybody ever wants direction on something like that, reach out. I mean, and they've got you. I know you do so much for the world. But just, I want to be accessible to the people that are in that stage, because it's such a critical decision point. Anyway, that's really cool. Hope for the year. I think that the thing that I would say is, I stopped watching the news so long ago. I'm guessing 20 years ago. I'm one of the most ignorant people in the world. Yeah, when it comes to what's going on. I mean, but here's what I've discovered through social media. anything that's happening, I'm going to hear about it. If it's big, I'm going to hear about it. And, then it's like I tune in and go, okay, that's kind of important. I should probably figure out, do I have friends that were in the tornado in Kentucky, right? Or do I have people that are involved in the pandemic that we've lost? I mean, that stuff is going to happen, but I don't need to listen to it day in and day out. I don't need to listen to the panic and the frenzy and the negativity and the fear, which is what the news sells. So I don't do that. And I think if you don't watch that, your impression of the world is much more hopeful, because the reality is there's some great stuff happening. There's people that are changing the globe. There's people that are changing climate. There's people that are changing medicine. There's people that are changing human beings. There's people that are constantly involved in the evolution, and innovation is happening, whether you like it or not, which, by the way, don't get stuck, because it's real easy to become obsolete in the speed of change that's going on. Stay fresh, stay current, stay learning, stay eager, stay in curiosity. But what I'm going to tell you is that, knowing who I know, I have a very powerful and positive perception of where we're headed and what's going on. And I think the world has become a much smaller place. It's much less about us and them. It's much more about all of us. And I think that, the inclusion of the world opens up possibilities we've never seen before. And I believe that humanity is, there's some tricky stuff out there, no doubt. There's some forces, but I think we've got an excellent chance to have our best years ever ahead of us, not behind us, but ahead of us. We've got so many advantages, so many things that my grandfather, for example, didn't have, so many things that we live in today that are just possibilities, Michelle, just possibilities. And I would just say it's our focus that's going to determine whether we see those or whether we see what's not happening. And either one's a choice, and either one is how life will turn out. So in 22 and 23 and 24, I'm going to say the same thing. It's all about you.
That is so great. Thank you so much, Don. And I
My pleasure.
appreciate all the inspiration that you give every morning on Clubhouse.
7 o'clock on the East Coast. We're
Yeah,
there every
that's
morning doing
right.
it. Yeah, perfect. And you too, by the way. I know you've got a room in there that's great too. So yeah, we've got some great things to do. Let's keep doing it. And if there's anybody we can help, please let us know how. And are you going to
Yeah.
put some show notes, or what can we do to
Yeah.
have?
Yes. People will be able to find you in the show notes.
Okay, perfect.
And if you want to give a website or something, if you want to say that, that's fine too, but it definitely
Sure.
will be in the details.
Absolutely. Well, find me on, probably the best thing in the whole world. Find me on Instagram. It's where life is getting done these days.
It is, isn't it? Oh my
It is a
gosh.
little bit, yeah. Sadly,
Oh,
it is, but it's an easy place to find everybody. So find me there.
well,
Michelle,
thank you.
what a delightful show. What a great thing you're doing. I'm so proud of you. So happy for the people that get to listen to you every day. And thanks for including me in your vision.
Thank you, Don.